Right now, inside your skull, something is happening that has never happened anywhere else in the animal kingdom. You're not even aware of it. You're just reading these words. But behind your eyes, billions of tiny cells are firing at once just to let you understand a sentence. It feels normal. It feels like nothing. That's the trick. Because what's sitting inside your head right now is not just bigger than most animal brains, it's built differently, completely differently. Most people assume the human brain wins because it's the biggest brain out there. That's not true, not even close. There's an animal walking around today with a brain 3 times heavier than yours and 3 times more neurons packed inside it. And yet it can't do what you're doing right now. In 2009, a scientist in Rio de Janeiro finally figured out why. Her name is Suzana Herculano-Houzel, and what she discovered didn't just explain the brain, it explained you. Stay till the end, because the real reason you can think, plan, and imagine is stranger than anything you learned in school. For decades, everyone believed the same story. Bigger brain, smarter animal. Simple, clean, obvious. Elephants have massive brains. Whales have even bigger ones. So why aren't they writing books and building rockets? Herculano Housel wanted a real answer, not a guess. She needed to know exactly how many neurons were inside a brain. Not estimated, counted. So she invented a method. She dissolved brains into a kind of soup. It sounds brutal, but it worked. Each nucleus of every neuron gets counted one by one in liquid form. In 2009, she ran the human brain through this process. The result? 86 billion neurons. Not the 100 billion everyone had been repeating for decades. 86 billion. But here's what's fascinating. That number alone wasn't the discovery. The discovery was what that number meant. She compared the human brain to other primates, monkeys, apes, and something strange showed up. The human brain wasn't special in its design, it was just a primate brain scaled up. Same rules, same architecture, just more of it. That should have been disappointing. It wasn't, because it raised a bigger question. If your brain follows the same blueprint as a monkey's brain, why can a monkey brain never do what yours does? So what killed the bigger is better theory for good? An elephant. In 2014, Herculano Housel got access to something almost nobody gets to study: a full elephant brain. Her team spent 6 months slicing it apart by hand, piece by piece. 5 grams at a time, they counted every neuron they could find. The result stunned even her. The elephant brain held 257 billion neurons, 3 times more than yours. If size and neuron count were the whole story, elephants should outthink us completely. They don't. So what happened? Imagine you're standing next to that elephant brain on a lab table. It's heavier than a bowling ball. It looks like the ultimate thinking machine. But when the researchers looked closer, 98% of those 257 billion neurons weren't even in the thinking part of the brain. They were crammed into the cerebellum, the region mostly responsible for controlling movement. Coordinating a trunk with 40,000 muscles takes a staggering amount of processing power. So the elephant spent almost its entire neural budget on moving its body, not on thinking about the world. When they counted only the neurons in the elephant's cortex, the part tied to reasoning, memory, and decision-making, the number dropped to just 5.6 billion. Your cortex holds 16 billion, almost 3 times more than an elephant's, despite your brain being a fraction of the size. That's the twist nobody saw coming. It was never about how many neurons an animal has. It's about where those neurons are and what they're doing. But that's only half the story, because having 16 billion cortical neurons doesn't explain everything either. A neuron is expensive, brutally expensive. Every single neuron demands a constant supply of energy just to stay alive and keep firing. The human brain makes up about 2% of your body weight, but it burns around 20% of your daily energy. Just sitting still, reading this sentence, your brain is consuming a huge slice of every calorie you eat today. So here's the real problem evolution had to solve. How do you afford 86 billion expensive, energy-hungry cells when every other primate our size is stuck chewing raw food for 9 hours a day just to get enough calories to survive? Picture a chimpanzee for a moment. 9 hours. Every single day. Chewing raw leaves, raw fruit, raw stems, just to extract enough energy to stay alive. There's barely any time left over for anything else. No time to explore. No spare energy to build a bigger brain. Nature doesn't hand out free upgrades. Every extra neuron has to be paid for. And primates that size simply can't afford 86 billion of them on a raw diet. So how did we? Fire. At some point, an ancestor of ours discovered that heat breaks food down before your body has to. Cooking does the digestive work in advance. Suddenly, calories that used to take hours of chewing and digesting could be absorbed in minutes. Herculano-Houzel's research points to cooking as the turning point that made a bigger brain financially possible. Not a lucky mutation. Not a magic leap in intelligence. A pot of soup over a fire. Once cooking entered the picture, our ancestors weren't spending 9 hours a day chewing anymore. That freed up time and energy went somewhere. It went into growing one of the most expensive organs biology has ever built. Compare that to right now. You probably ate breakfast in under 15 minutes today. You didn't think twice about it, but that 15 minutes is doing something that took your ancient relatives nearly 10 times longer to achieve, using raw food alone. Every quick meal you eat is quietly funding billions of neurons you never even think about. But there's still a piece missing. Energy explains how the brain could grow. It doesn't explain why 16 billion cortical neurons produce something no other animal has. The ability to imagine a version of the world that doesn't exist yet, and then build it. So what's actually happening in there? Your cortex isn't just bigger in raw numbers, it's wired for something specific. Dense connections between neurons let information move through many pathways at once instead of just one narrow line. That density is what allows you to hold an idea, twist it, combine it with another idea, and produce something new. An elephant can remember a watering hole from decades ago. A crow can solve a clever puzzle for food, but neither species can sit down, imagine a future that hasn't happened, and then reshape the physical world to make it real. You do that constantly without even noticing. Every building around you started as a thought inside someone's cortex before it became steel and concrete. Every law, every song, every plan for tomorrow, all of it passed through the same billions of connected cells that are sitting in your head right now. And it might be the strangest part of all. None of this feels remarkable to you. You don't wake up amazed that you can plan a trip 5 months from now, or picture a conversation before it happens, or worry about a problem that doesn't even exist yet. Animals with far more neurons than the human cortex, like that elephant, spend their neural resources controlling a body. Yours are largely free to imagine, calculate, and invent. That's not a small difference. That's the entire gap between a species that survives its environment and a species that redesigns it. So, zoom out for a second. Your brain isn't the biggest. It isn't even close. It isn't the one with the most neurons on the planet. What it has is a rare combination. Enough cortical neurons to think in complex, layered ways, cheap enough to fuel through a cooked diet, wired densely enough to imagine things that have never existed. That combination has never repeated itself anywhere else on Earth. Not in elephants, not in whales, not in any other primate. Every single thought you've had today, every plan, every memory, every conversation ran through 86 billion cells that only exist inside you because some ancestor learned to cook food over a fire instead of chewing it raw for hours. You didn't earn that brain. You inherited it. The real question isn't why your brain has an advantage over other animals. It's what you're doing with the one advantage every other species on this planet would trade everything to have.